numbers matter too, right? So before we get into what we're actually doing in the GOC, I thought I'd be able to frame it a little bit with how much money we're talking about, right? So when Chuck talked at the very beginning, he said, you know, we think about marketing, we think about HR, we think about GOC as the broader GOC. So when we think about that group, you know, what's the budget that we're talking about controlling? So if you look at it up here, you can see here, we're talking about $475 million, right? That's the entire pool of managed costs that we're responsible for overseeing. Now, about $325 million of that gets pushed down to our hotels and runs through their P&L. So I'm gonna walk through this briefly, very high level, just so you have a general understanding of how it all works. And then these guys are gonna walk through exactly what we're doing that makes up some of those costs. So if you go down the left-hand side, right, the where we spend it category, right, the first big box, that's John Wallace and his group. That's $124 million of marketing spend. Now that's not an all-in cost for marketing, right? So Hyatt.com isn't in that number. Hyatt.com is in Alex's number down below in technology. Chris Brogan and his data analytics team, which is at $10 million, his people are there, the work that they do is there, the computers and the data warehouse that they use to do their job is down below in technology, right? So that's not fully loaded, but you can kind of get a feel of how these expenses are broken out, right? So we have $125 million of marketing costs, roughly, right? We have $55 million of sales. Now, this is one of my favorite numbers on the page, all right? Not the $55 million, but the $22 million. And Ty's going to talk about this when he gets to his section, but just to think about it in your head, right? $22 million on the global sales organization. Ty's group's responsible for managing $2 billion of revenue. So when you think about the best investment on this page, $22 million of expense generates $2 billion of hotel revenue, right? That's roughly 22% of all of the revenue generated in all of our hotels. So just to put that into perspective, right? $22 million, think about that. Our reservation system, right? This is Omaha, the global call centers, $45 million for that cost. Again, the technology isn't included in there. Most of that is people and rent, right? Ideally, we'd shrink that number as more people, you know, use the device in their pocket and not pick up the phone to call that. And then we have technology, right? $130 million of expense in technology. And Alex is going to talk about what we're doing with that $130 million and what we're going to do better with that $130 million to improve that return. And then finally, we have Gold Passport, right? $120 million worth of redemptions on an annual basis that comes through there. So you look at that, and that's the $475 million that we're managing. And then you get to the right side of the screen, right? And the right side of the screen is our problem, if you will. The left side is a bit of our problem too, right? If you talk to everybody who manages on the left side, they'd say we want that number to be bigger. And if you talk to everybody who's standing in front of me, they'd say we want that number to be smaller, right? So that's one issue that we have. On the right-hand side, our challenge is how we pay for it, right? So this isn't an easy exercise, right? It'd be great if we had one, here's how we pay for it, because then if we said, okay, our priorities are global sales, or our priorities are data analytics, technology, whatever it is, we could shift resources to account for that. Unfortunately, we don't have that flexibility to shift those resources. If you look down the right-hand side, we have 12 different funding mechanisms for how we pay for things, right? Gold Passport pays for the lion's share of these costs. North American chain pays for some, international chain, corporate pays for some. There's a lot of different methodologies there. One of the things that we're working on from a finance perspective is simplifying that. And we've gotten, I'll take technology as an example. We used to bill that out 27 different ways, which didn't allow us the flexibility of moving money from one pocket to the other as our priorities change. We've shrunk that down to now 3 different ways of building that out. So we have a lot more latitude when Alex says, you know what, I'm hearing that our priorities are now on our property management systems or our guest request systems. We can now move some money over into that pot so he can do the things that he wants to do. So we're working on trying to create a little more flexibility in how we manage this money. Now, I started at the beginning saying, you know, it's almost $500 million. Gosh, that's a lot of money. So let's kind of put that back into a bigger perspective, right? In our hotels, we generate $9 billion a year in revenue, right? Our GOP margins are a little under 33%. So you think about that, we have $3 billion of GOP. You do the math, that means we spend $6 billion a year in our hotels, right? We're putting $325 million into that $6 billion.